Mike, let's make a podcast, my friend.
All right.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I am very, very stoked that we're getting to do this. I'm glad to actually be getting to sit down
Yeah,
with you
no, me too.
and find out all these things.
I told you before, I've familiar with this podcast through friends who've been on it, and they always look great on it. And I think I reached out to you at some point and said, hey, I want to do your podcast too.
Yeah, which again was perfectly timed
Yeah.
because you were on the list where I was like, I'm going to reach out to Mike real soon.
Yeah.
And then you did it for me, and here we are. So I honestly just want to open up the floodgates at the very beginning. Because, like I said, I've gotten bits and pieces of information of all the things you've done in the world of writing and comedy and TV, all this sort of stuff. But I want to hear it all from you. So I guess just kind of lay it out up front for me of like right now, like what all are you involved in? I know you're still doing like stand up and everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, so what all are you involved in right now?
At this moment in time, in 2020, so I do stand up quite a bit. I do stand up now at this point in my career for as long as I've been doing it. For the first time in my career, I get to do it for the pure joy of doing it. I love it. No one's going to discover me. When you're an entertainer, especially a comedian, most of your life, no matter how far you've come, it's always like, who's in the audience tonight that's going to give me the next step up the ladder? And that's not a thing for me now. Now I purely enjoy doing it. Love to do as much of it as I can. I teach a lot of comedy writing classes. But I think I've also made my living as a speechwriter over the years. And so I also have a awesome day gig now at Ohio State writing speeches for people.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I love comedy is my is the gift I have. That's awesome. I love it. It's like someone who plays guitar.
Yeah.
But like writing speeches for people I just love it. It's like doing puzzles. I love it. So this is a really good gig. And I have a kid in college now, and at a different college, and I have to pay his tuition. So this plopped into my lap at the perfect time.
Perfect balance. Yes. What was the thing that popped up first for you? Like if we're going back to when any of this first came up, was comedy the first love? Was
at the beginning? Well, I did school plays in high school. I mean, I should say first, I grew up in a big, loud, funny family.
Okay.
All right. I'm the first one to have graduated from college. I have two big brothers and two little sisters. And in my family, there were two ways to impress mom and dad, and that was to excel at sports or get a laugh at the dinner table. And my brothers were older than me. They were very good athletes. I love sports, but early on, I said that's not my lane in this family. I can make mom, spit water through her nose, And so that really became my focus. And my mom and dad were very funny people. I mean, they were, everyone in that, it was not an easy room. It wasn't like you could just be the precocious kid with the wisecrack. Everyone was wisecracking.
Right.
So it was a great training ground for me. So I did plays and stuff. I grew up in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
So comedy was a thing. Comedy wasn't some weird thing that they do in the big cities. We were in the comedy city. We were, my dad was a fan of comedy, had gone, I think he and my mom went on a date to the Hungry Eye and saw Lenny Bruce at some point. They were both local San Franciscans. We had comedy albums. We had Bob Newhart albums and Mom's Mabley and Bill Cosby, back when that was a good word. So I grew up on comedy. My dad would always watch the Merv Griffin show, and they would usually have comedians on. It was like 4 p.m. I'd come home from school, and there'd be, Woody Allen or whoever. There was a comedian on,
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up with that world. But then went to college for political science. Was very much that was always my career goal. Was at that age I would have said I wanted to be governor of California. That was probably my goal as like a 13-year-old.
Interesting.
So that was my thing. And pretty early on, say high school, early college. I volunteered on a lot of campaigns. I got a reputation as a funny kid who knew politics. And so candidates and campaign managers, if they had to go, they'd go to an event. They'd be like, Mike, give us something. What do you got? We're going to talk to the PTA, and I'd whatever. And kind of just started doing that. So comedy and politics, it's all the same thing for me. My whole career makes perfect sense to me in a linear fashion, even though I've done a lot of different things. But it's all comes down to the ability of writing a joke. The ability of making my mom laugh at the dinner table is still like everything I do. It's like if you can manipulate words to make your mom laugh, you can do anything, right? Yeah. You can make someone cry or think or have a call to action right? It's all the same trick at that point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in my head, it all makes absolute sense. It's that one skill.
And so you kind of relate, and obviously I know we'll get there as we uncover more and more, but do you kind of relate that core factor being the kind of through line, we'll say, to any secondary venture you've done, right?
Oh, it's all the same thing. Yeah. It's all, I tell writers, comics, anyone that if you want this life, and I have, as a kid, if you asked me what is success in entertainment, it would be to win an Academy Award, to be world famous, right? And that's obviously success. Now that I am where I am in my life and I have made a middle-class living my entire life in entertainment as a comedy writer, it's like, that is huge success for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, to have a house and a car and a kid in college, off the simple ability to write jokes. Yeah.
Do you feel like, I know we're probably jumping way ahead here, but do you feel like that definition of success or understanding what success looked like to you, was that something you had a conscious grasp of throughout all of this stuff, or was there an uncovering moment where eventually you were like, wait a second, I don't think I want that childhood version of success, which means X amount of fame or money or notoriety or whatever. I've now uncovered that success, my definition, looks like this.
Oh, well, I do not want to make you think that I don't still want that.
Of course.
Of course I would like to have an Academy Award and be world famous. I mean, that part never goes away, but there are layers to it.
Yep.
And within that period, that 40 years, whatever, working in, basically doing this, there have been 5-6 year chunks where it was dire times. There was no money, and you're like, what the hell have I done? Looking for jobs, whatever, like all of us, right? It is a hustle. And there were also years, especially in the television writing years, you have overall deals, and you're like, man, you're doing great. So, no, it was never a plan, but comedy was never a plan. Like I said, I went to school to be political, I wanted to be governor, whatever. I'll tell you quickly that at some point, we are jumping around like crazy, but at some point I did the Tonight Show. That was the biggest break in my career. And I remember they sent a limo. I lived 4 blocks from the studio. I was in LA at the time, They sent a limo. And I remember it was in the limo driving the 4 blocks to NBC where I thought, I guess this is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Because it was still just comedy. You go do comedy. Someone gets you, hey, you're good. We're going to put you up for this show. And, disappointment. Hey, you want to do the Tonight Show? It was like, so I don't know that it was ever I can tell you for sure it was never a path from the beginning. It was a hustle.
Yeah.
So
take me back. How do we end up, how do we go to school for political science and we want to be governor and all this sort of stuff, and then we're at the Tonight Show getting picked up by a limo to go write. Take me back to even going into college and I guess more so, How is it a political, like how's the political background? Where's that even come from? Where's the interest of wanting to be involved in that even pop up?
Oh, I was raised by bleeding heart liberals. You know, my parents were not like, they were before the kids were born, or when we were babies, they were very involved in like John F. Kennedy, like before, you know. So by the time we came around, you know, they were, you know, Catholic Democrats in San Francisco, right? We had a picture of the Pope and John F. Kennedy on our kitchen wall, you know. So they were political in that way, and you know, growing up when I did, you know, they were very much, you know, talking about things like the civil rights movement and you know, the women's rights movements, and so I went to San Francisco State. My freshman year, I interned at a campaign that was run out of the office of Harvey Milk, who was the first elected, you know, gay supervisor who was assassinated that same year. So I was at a point in time where I was thrust into very high-level politics in San Francisco at that time. There were, you know, the mayor was assassinated, Harvey Milk was assassinated. I was an 18-year-old poli-sci freshman at the local college when suddenly there were a whole bunch of campaigns for people running for seats with, you know, and so I had this full immersion in politics and had a reputation already as a funny kid. Hey, and so I was written for 50 candidates when I was in college. People would just say, hey, you got a thing? We're doing this. We're for the, you know, the endorsement of the, you know, sanitation workers union. You know, we need an icebreaker, you know. Or here's something I'm going to read this over. You know, what do you think? And so I got that. So I did a little bit of stand-up. This is going to sound like the biggest, I'm such a name dropper, but I've had this weird, in comedy, I don't know, I've run into a lot of very famous people through no you know, talent of my own. My very first time doing stand-up, signed up for an open mic at a place called Cobb's Pub in San Francisco, which went on to be a famous comedy club. I don't remember what year it was, but Dana Carvey hosted the open mic. He was just a local guy, right? Local open micer. I signed up. I was going to get the last spot of the night. I knew that. Right before I go on stage, Robin Williams drops in. Like right before. Like everyone had gone up except me. And Dana says, Robin's going on. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I'll leave. I just wanted to go out and watch Robin Williams, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you won't leave. You're going on. And I was like, no, seriously, I'm going to leave. And he's like, I'm not going to let you. Once you're on the list, we can't take you off the list. And, you know, petrified. Robin, of course, is Robin Williams, you know, whatever.
And you're about to follow him?
Yeah, and he did. You know, we're doing this open mic, right? We're doing like 5-minute sets. He does 50. I don't know. It's Robin Williams. It was past like 2 o'clock. The bar was closed.
Wow.
Right? Like last call was like, you know, long time ago. But Dana made me go on, and I went on, and it was horrible. In fact, I went with my brother, my best friend, and this girl I liked, right? And they had sat through it was a long-ass night, you know. While I'm on stage, I look down, and my best friend is holding the girl's hand. It's like, what a night.
They had enough time to form
and I'm like, oh, God. So anyway, I had done stand-up, but no success at all. You know, just, I don't know. Whatever. I was, you know, whatever. Just doing stand-up. Probably did it 15, 20 times at mics.
And sorry to interrupt, but was that just like almost at that point in time, maybe for the experience, the hobby maybe of it, of like, hey, I've always been funny, I've always liked comedy, why wouldn't I do this while I'm doing all this political work over here?
You know what I think more? I loved being in school plays, and I didn't have time to do school plays anymore. I think that's a part of it was just that stage fix, I think. well, I'll do this then. I can't, my guitar playing sucks. I could do stand-up, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyone can do stand-up, right? I mean, I'm a
Right.
funny kid. I had jokes that I'd written down. I think all of my first jokes were Lenny Bruce jokes that I tweaked a little bit.
Perfect.
I seem to remember that was my process.
Yes.
Back then.
What's this thing I like? Let me just insert my name here,
And of all comedians, I didn't pick one who was a crowd pleaser. I picked one that doesn't do that well at his best.
You set the bar low enough. You're like, I think I can reach this one. We're good. Yeah.
Right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So we're doing a lot of active work in the political world. We're pursuing comedy just cause to get that little bit of that performance fix, all that sort of stuff. I guess how long does that balance go? Like, I guess maybe a two-part question. Like, how far do you get in the world of politics? But then how do you kind of keep this comedy hobby going as well?
I graduated from college. I had run for my city council when I was 19, so I was like kind of, and maybe they were very close. I ran twice and they were very close races. And had I become an elected at that point, probably would have been a different path. Mm-hmm. I think the desired path at that point would have been to go from city council to assemblyman to Congress, whatever. I think that was the track I wanted. But I didn't, so I went to D.C. looking for a job on the Hill. I figured I'd get and didn't get one. Very shocking to me. I thought I was all that. Do you not know who I am?
Right.
Does my San Francisco State BA not impress you?
Doesn't matter. Let me tell you some Lenny Bruce jokes real quick. Let's see if this rings any bells.
Yeah. And there was a comedy club there that had an open mic. And in fact, I remember the first time I signed up, it was because they said if you did 5 minutes, you got a ticket for like a bowl of chili and a beer or something. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go, who doesn't like chili and beer, right?
Dinner for the night?
Yeah. So I started doing that. And the difference was I had been in San Francisco doing open mics, with Dana Carvey, Robin Williams. I mean, Bob Goldthwait, Paula Poundstone. Those the locals there were, and then in D.C., it was not. It was just a town who had comedy, And in fact, D.C. has this wonderful black comedy tradition. A lot of great black comics had come out of D.C. But there wasn't in like the suburbs. The first club I went to was in the Virginia suburbs, and they didn't have a scene at all. And so I did okay. I was a little better than the other people who were first trying it, because at least I had done it a few times and had high standards, And I'd fired Lenny Bruce as my writer. He sucked for me. Did not have my voice at all. And, had lived a little bit.
Right.
And had some things to talk about and started to,
When would you say, like, forming your own comedy path really did become the more prominent thing? Because, like, up until this point, it's been like, hey, absolutely, it's a thing that I like doing. I'm looking for the comedy clubs wherever I'm at to go out and do it. But we're sort of doing it on the side. We're still in the world of politics and still hoping to grow there. When does that transition begin to happen?
So a friend of mine who I had this teaching job back there where you teach kids about politics. They called it close-up. Anyway, it's a guy I knew from there who's still a good friend. His brother knew the manager of a comedy club in Austin, Texas, the Laugh Stop, and it was this chance thing, and he was like, I'm going to call, in fact his name was Ross, I'm going to tell Ross about you. And I sent a tape, and I got my first road gig. And little did I know that the Laugh Stops in Texas were like major clubs at the time. But they always need MCs, right? And so I went down and worked for them, and then the Houston Laugh Stop, and I became regulars. And at that point, I worked for like a who's who of comics. The headliners that were coming from L.A. or from Houston, Bill Hicks, Sam Kinison were there in Houston. We worked with both of them. Worked at Hicks a ton. But all these other acts that were coming through on that circuit, and I got, whatever it was. I don't know, was I getting $150 a week? I don't know what it was. But you ate at the club. You stayed in the condo. You didn't really spend money. But I got to then open for, Bob Saget, Paul Reiser, just all these incredible comics. And, you do 6-7 shows a week, hang out in the comeback. Then they stayed in the condo too, to stay in a condo for 2 weeks with Bob Saget. Talk about comedy school. Damn. And Saget was, he is as big a joke nerd as I am. All we want to do is talk jokes all day long. Everything's, how would you do that? Oh, I would do this. And I would, and I just learned so much. And I was, sure, I was a huge pain in the ass. I would just, every comic I asked, I would ask, how do you do it? How do you do this job? How do you write jokes? What do you think of my jokes? Can my jokes,
Yeah.
And comedy community is a generous community. There are assholes in every line of work, but the comedy community writ large is full of nice people. Mm-hmm. And we help each other, especially some kid who's not my competition. I'll help some kid, right? And
right.
So, yeah. So but even then I was looking for work on the Hill. This was fun. It's the equivalent of someone going on a road gig with your buddies in a van because you have a garage band. It was still never, that was never really the goal.
Right. So it was still the enjoyable hobby, just for fun.
It was a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I would love to be a famous comedian.
Right.
And I'm going to keep working at it. I'm good at it. It took me a while. Once I started working with guys who had a reputation of not hanging with bad comics, like Bill Hicks, who was kind of the god of comedy back then. Once Hicks started bringing me on the road as his opening act, I had the anointment of the king that I was a good comic. And I needed that more than other people needed that. It was like, oh, Hicks wouldn't lie to me.
Do you remember what that kind of, what we'll call a breakthrough moment was for you? Like, do you remember that time frame or that specific moment?
I remember the joke.
Okay, really? Okay.
But the joke, and this is now is going to sound like an old hacky joke, but at the time, cable was still pretty new. Cable televangelists were new, right? Now it's just so, but that's when, they were local things before then, but cable suddenly gave birth to the international, whatever, the national. And Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, pre-scandal, they had PTL Club, and they were on TV. And I was a road comic who spent a lot of times in a condo with other comics watching cable. And so my bit was, you watch these televangelists, I've read the Bible multiple times, and nowhere in it have I ever seen an 800 number, right? It wasn't a great joke, but that joke. And then I did a whole bit about Jim and Tammy Faye Baker had started a theme park called Heritage USA. And I said, oh, you got to go. It's fun. I got a crown of thorns with my name sewn in front.
Okay.
All right. That joke, those two religious jokes at the time were my ticket. Every headline comic, you didn't share, way before any kind of social media. So the only way jokes got shared is comics told each other, hey, this opening act has a great joke, right? And that got me everything. That was where people knew me before they knew me. I'd get to clubs, And, the headliner didn't know who you were, and then I'd go do my opening set, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're that guy.
Interesting.
I've heard that joke. It's a great bit."
That's cool.
So
Okay.
that really was, say, for me, I've always been a great joke writer. I didn't know I was a great joke writer, though, until people who were great joke writers started saying, "Damn, you got to go on the road with me.
Yeah.
You can write jokes."
When you think back to that time early on when we're getting the wheels turning, so we're out on the road, we're getting in cooler rooms with cooler people, all this sort of stuff. Things are starting to click. In that starting out phase, we'll say, the warming up phase, do you remember any specific advice that you got during that time that you've always kept with you?
Oh, well, so much. I mean, the nuts and bolts of joke writing. Yes, I mean, it was master class after master class of people telling me how jokes work, and that absolutely. And I teach classes now. I tell comics I can't make you funny, but I can make you the funniest version of you by teaching you how to write a joke right. It's like people who play music by ear and then learn what the notes mean. It's like, oh, I could actually build now with this, So yeah, a lot of that, but also I just learned a lot of stuff about the hustle, about that, the people that you look up to as like your comedy heroes, and they come into town and you realize that it's the same hustle for them. They're further along. They've done Tonight Show at the time was the Holy Grail. They've done whatever. But it's still a hustle, man. There's so few that actually get breakthrough money, and so that was part of it, Things like, things that every comic worries, new comic, every amateur comic is like, "I'm afraid someone's going to steal my jokes," You never hear a professional comic say that. Pros don't worry about people stealing their jokes. Steal my joke. You're not as funny as me. The hell you think you're gonna do Mike Larsen better than me?
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
And that's way counterintuitive for an amateur comic. But when you work with people, you start to develop the swagger a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I've often had that conversation when it comes to general gatekeeping of information or something, right? Now we're not talking, the really close friend, you're not going to give their number out to anybody I'm not talking that sort of information, but the general thing of people worrying about they're going to copy my style, or they're going to copy my process or whatever. And exactly what you just said, it is the state of mind of, sure, I'll tell you exactly how to do these things because I know you're not going to do them how I do.
But hell yeah, you're going to steal from me. I'm good at this.
Right.
Hell yeah, you're going to steal from me.
Yep.
You know who they don't steal from? The guy whining about people stealing his jokes.
Yes.
No one wants that guy's jokes.
Yep. And that's...
You just got to write them. You got to write them faster than they can steal them.
Yep.
And make them about yourself. That was the big advice that people would say. Only write from the point of view of Mike Larsen. That doesn't matter. Hicks said, which I say this all the time to people, the definition of funny is I think it's funny. That's the only thing that matters. The trick, the skill then is translating what I think is funny to a wider audience. I mean, that might take some work, and but if it popped in my head and made me giggle inside, it's funny. That's all you need to know.
Yep.
And most amateur comics, through no fault of their own, I certainly went through this for many years, are still asking people if this is funny? And you could just see it when they walk on and say, "Is this funny?" Mm-hmm. And a professional comic is like, "This is funny." Whether you find it funny or not really doesn't matter to me because it's funny.
Yeah, I feel like that really directly translates into what I'll kind of umbrella as any form of art creation, entertainment, anything
Absolutely.
like that, right?
Yes.
Obviously, yes, especially nowadays, everything exists on the internet, but while lots of things are being created and shared to an audience, that we sure hope that audience likes it. Like you said earlier, hey, we're still wanting all that success, and any new version of it that pops up, I'm going to take. So that goes without saying. Any of us, I want this podcast to become the coolest podcast ever, right?
Yeah.
However, at the core of all of it, of anything I create, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a film, whatever, do I think it's cool? Well, yes, I do. So I'm going to make it. And the bonus then is I shared it with people and 50 other people thought it was cool, or thousands of other people thought it was cool. And so I really directly relate to, again, that explanation of when it comes to joke writing or performing comedy, well, do you think it's funny? And then are you telling that story to an audience? And then let's see if they think it's funny. But ultimately, at your core, is it a piece of you that you enjoy? And I feel like I look at so much of arts and entertainment the exact same way, of building it from a core of personal joy, right? Of, do I think this is cool, right? Would I love if this episode that we're doing right now, we're recording it on a podcast, of course, it's looking cool, it's going to be shared in social clips all over social media. Of course, I would love audiences of thousands to check this out and be like, this is great. But at a bare minimum, what I'm most enjoying is that I love storytelling and I love getting to know people.
Right.
So the fact you and I right now are getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And we're talking through unfiltered ways. We're not checking our phone every 5 minutes. We don't have anywhere to be right now.
Right.
That at its core is, well, I'm kind of glad podcasting exists because it gives me an easy excuse to sit down and get to know somebody and tell stories. And that's something I sure love to do. And the bonus becomes I get to share it with an audience. So that was a bit of a ramble, but all in to say that I really, really I relate directly to, while that spawns from talking about comedy and joke writing, I think that umbrellas and encompasses kind of everything. When it's like, does it mean something to you? Do you enjoy it? Making that the most prominent thing, and then we'll see how an audience responds.
Two things. So do you enjoy it? And are you able to read the room?
Yeah.
Not only in a literal room, but in the world. Are you someone who generally, when you speak up in a group, you get a laugh? I am. Being funny's easy to me, all right? Being a great athlete is easy to my big brother. I'm a good athlete. My big brother is a funny guy. He's not as funny as I am, and I'm not as good an athlete as he is. That part, yes. From my very earliest memories, it was people laughing at something I did. So, therefore, if I think it's funny, it's funny. All right. Now, there are people who do comedy because they have some other mission. They want to be an influencer or whatever, and they think comedy is, you can just go down to hashtag and sign up and say you're a comedian. And I have had this conversation with people. Do people generally laugh when you pipe up in a room and they're like, no? And I'm like, all right, well, good luck to you. Because the people you're going up against do. It's like, can you carry a tune? No. Then maybe singer-songwriter isn't your gig. Maybe bass player's your gig. Whatever. Yep. So it's that combination, though, of taking a good hard look at the world and how the world reacts to you. I always tell comics we have 2 points of view. There's our point of view that we want the audience to know about us, and we tell them that. It's super basic. I'm going to make a joke about Trump, and you're going to know my point of view, whatever, right? The more important point of view, and the one we don't think about, is what is their point of view the second I walk on stage? For most of my career, I was just another young, skinny, white boy comic. And so I had to immediately set myself apart. And usually it was with a political joke. Now, I'm the old guy. And I had to get used to that. I don't really do a lot of old guy jokes, but I have to at least be aware that if I'm at a place where there's 6 comics and the other 5 are all in their 20s, and then I get on stage, I got to at least be aware of it, And so it's kind of those 2 things. We have to know both points of view at all times.
Yeah. So, and so obviously, like you're saying as well, like a lot of that can sometimes be a case by case. Like you got to be adaptable, right?
Yeah.
Of like, again, reading the room figuratively, literally, whatever it may be. I'm interested.
Did a show for realtors last night. They had a good time. To them, they left the rooms thinking that guy was really funny. For me, it was not a great set. Yeah. They just weren't. They were fun. They were laughing at the right places, but they weren't digging it like I knew other people would.
Right.
you know, and it was great. Yep. Everyone's happy except me, you know, but whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's the interesting thing sometimes is like when you're, again, all of this kind of goes across the board of like creating something, performing something, whatever it may be. So much of what we're talking about too is like our experience with it can be like, man, I don't think that went that well. That didn't feel that great, or I'm not feeling that great. But then from an outside perspective, someone's like, what are you talking about? That was great. That was great.
You were the best person of the night. You're the one we went home remembering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate that.
Exactly. I've experienced that in so many different ways, whether it be a video project or even sometimes podcasts that I've done in the past. You know, like someone will be like, oh man, I listened to the episode with so and so and it was like so good, and I'm like, man, like I felt so off that day. I didn't know, I don't think I carried the conversation that well. I left the conversation recording being like, wow, I can't believe I just, man, that's a bad episode. And then no one knows.
I've had it go the other way too. I've had sets where the audience was not feeling me, but I walked off stage and said that was fun for whatever reason. Maybe I did a new joke that worked, or I had an ad lib that I know is going to be a bit. You know, when you do something on stage where in your head you're like, oh, it's a bit. I got a new bit.
Yeah.
You know.
Now I'm curious, in a situation like that, how, and I'm sure it's still, it's like, hey, well, yeah, sometimes it just freaking sucks. It's not fun. But like in a moment like that, when you feel good about what you did, but it wasn't received how you'd hope, how are you navigating that feeling? Like, how have you learned to navigate that feeling? Or maybe how do you tell people or share with them? Like, hey, here's how you balance these emotions.
Well, I mean, there is a part of me that reminds me that I'm a worthless piece of shit that has never been funny, and what the hell do I think I'm doing in comedy?
That voice is always
there's that
there.
voice. He will always be there. He's an asshole, but he won't leave. Mm-hmm. But if I went up and I did what I meant to do and it didn't work, it's a learning moment, and it kind of cracks me up a little bit. Because I'm like, whoa, okay, interesting, you know. If I go up and I really don't do well, it's usually my fault. In fact, it's always my fault. I've had some bad audiences, but usually it's because I get defensive, or I get loud. Sometimes when I get nervous, I just start talking really loud, and it's like, even the voice in my head is like, shut the fuck up, man, tone it down, turn it down, you know, but, so then I'm angry at myself, because I wasted the night. You know, I could have done my bits, I could have showed some class, I could have gotten quieter, and, you know, which is a much more of a swagger, much stronger move to get quieter rather than louder when it's not working. And I know better. And I've been doing this a long time. I know that. And so when I do like a lazy mistake, and it's, you know, I mean, I'm pretty good at comedy. It's been a long time since an audience absolutely hated me. There were certainly times, but I got enough 100% jokes that everybody appreciates, you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, for me, I try to think of the working experience part of it. But you know, I am a performer. We are both snowflakes and narcissists, right? At the same time. Mm-hmm. And so after a good show, the narcissist won't shut up. After a bad show, the snowflake is curled in the fetal position.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, I'm curious on your perspective of, you know, something I see this be shared on social all the time. Now, I personally am a fan of it, and I feel like I fall into this way of thinking a little bit more when it comes to art, entertainment, creation, whatever, pursuing of our goals. I don't know if you're familiar with any of like Rick Rubin's stuff, or who that is, you know, any of his kind of outlook on a lot of this stuff. I feel like I fall heavily into his category of create because you want to create, and make it because you want to make it. And while again simultaneously wanting my things to be successful, but I'm not putting that as number one. The money, the fame, whatever. I'm doing it because I want to do it. I'm going to do it well because that's the way that I want to do it. But ultimately, doing it for me, for that experience. And he has this thing that gets shared all the time of the audience comes second, right? Of like you do it for you. What do you want to create, perform, share, talk about, whatever? Don't do it to simply cater to something that you hope is commercially successful.
That's what Steve Martin says too, by the way.
Okay.
It's only one person that matters. Me.
So when it comes to, we'll just call it like that bubble of thinking, when it comes to a lot of this creation, where do you land at with that? What's your perspective on that? Especially, in the case of doing stand-up or writing for somebody. I mean, I've never done I've done improv, in front of people, but I've never done stand-up. But obviously you're going up there, you're saying things and hoping to invoke a reaction, a laugh, and people are entertained and all this sort of stuff. But like we've kind of threaded throughout this, ultimately it's like, well, does it come from a core place inside me that I enjoy performing this? So when it comes to like that ideology, maybe.
It has to be. You have to love. Like I say, the kid who says, no, I don't normally make people laugh. It's like, you're really not. I mean, most of comedy, most of entertainment is horrible. It's waiting around. It's kissing ass. So much ass kissing is just constant. Being nice to people you don't like. Inserting yourself in awkward situations. All that. It's horrible. You better love that 5 minutes you get on stage at the mic, even if it's going horrible. That better be the greatest place you can be. Otherwise, God, don't do this. Do something else. Yeah, so for that time on stage, and I've always been prone to panic attacks, my whole life I've had, and because I was Catholic, for the first 30 years of my life, the only prescription for that is to go to confession. Clearly, you're guilty about something, It wasn't until I dated a Jewish woman in my 30s that she said, have you ever considered therapy? And they were like, oh, of course you got panic attack. You're a comedian. You guys all have that. Here's a pill. Keep this in your pocket. If you have one, take one. It goes away. What? What? I didn't know that. So, yes. So I am... To this day, 2 minutes before I go on stage, I'm scared to death. I am so nervous. It's not stage fright. It's just, it's nerves. It's jumping out of the airplane. I trust the parachute. I packed it myself, and it's opened every other time. However,
Yeah. Well, I've often heard things explained of anxiety and excitement are very similar feelings,
Absolutely.
right? They're right beside each other.
Yes.
And so, they're going to feel nearly
and
the
it's
exact
the same motion. Butterflies are either fear
Exactly.
or excitement. Someone, I forget who, a comic said, just when you go on to just tell yourself it's excitement, not fear, it's excitement, not fear.
Yep.
And then go up and kill.
And that's in so many things
Yep.
that I've done where I felt that,
Yep.
like I literally will tell myself, I'm like,
Right.
this is scary. We're
Right.
about to jump out of the airplane, but ultimately it's also because I'm really excited because I'm going to go do this
Right.
thing.
You
it's
want adrenaline in this moment.
Right. It's,
Yeah.
in the last year is when I, first started to get on stage in front of people to perform improv comedy. And so far, every show that I've done, up until the minute I step on stage, I literally am like, why would I have ever agreed to this? I shouldn't have told this person I would
Right.
do this show. This is the dumbest thing. I
Who
don't
do I
belong
think I
here.
am? This is
shouldn't-
stupid.
Yes, I
Yeah.
should not have done this. And the moment I get out there, it all goes, and then it's like, this is so exciting. I can't believe I get to be dumb on a stage for people. Like, this is incredible. And so that walking that fine line of being able to identify, all right, anxiety and excitement, they feel very similar. How can I try to push this onto that edge of identifying it as excitement? But also, I think there's a value, and I heard somebody say this at some point, of the day that you're not nervous before you go to perform your thing, maybe you need to reevaluate how you feel about that.
Oh, and
thing.
I've had shows like that where I've gone on stage, whatever. I'm just hanging, talking with comics in the green room. Oh, I'm on. I go on stage. without any nervousness, and I get up there and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? It's not whatever, showbiz, Mike. It's not, my show face, whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of relates to, again, the person I heard talking about that whenever that was, is like feeling that anxiety, feeling that fear, ultimately, that is also excitement. That means you care. That means you care about what you're about to go do. You're hoping the show goes well. You're hoping your performance or your art or whatever you're doing, you're worried because you care. It's not necessarily the worry of, I shouldn't have done this, I'm so wrong for doing this. And it's being able, at least I feel like there's value in being able to remind ourselves of like, this is scary, but this is also, this anxiety I'm feeling is just excitement for going and doing this thing that I sure hope goes well.
Right.
And I hope it's fun for everybody involved, myself and the audience.
Right.
Do you remember, because I know you've mentioned a couple times, like, hey, yeah, of course, who hasn't had bad moments doing the thing that they've done?
I've had horrible slumps. I've had like weeks on end on the road where I am sucking every night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest takeaways you've had from any of those time frames? Whether it was like one show
You know what?
or any of
One
those
brought
slumps?
me out of it was I had this long slump where I just was not. I was just not. It's just not, and you're like, was I ever funny? And see, I grew up in San Francisco. My first job in high school was selling peanuts at the San Francisco Giants baseball games. Okay, so I went to a big Giants fan. And I remember at the time, I picked up the sports page and saw Will Clark at the time was the star first baseman of the Giants. And it said, Will Clark busts out of his hitting slump, goes 3 for 3. And I was like, Will Clark had a slump. And that night I killed. And then I was cool. It was like I was just loser. It's like, Will Clark went 6 games without a hit.
Yep.
I went 4 nights without a laugh. I can, know.
Yeah. I guess it's the idea of remembering that, as cliche as this is going to sound, it's like those bad times are not forever. That bad moment or that bad feeling isn't going to be, well, this is just it now. This is just it.
And it
forever.
is what it is. It's I wish I knew who told me this, because I use this quote all the time, and in various interviews I have attributed it to my dad or people, whatever, because it made sense at the time. But dream big, expect little, and that has described my life. By all means, aim for the stars, but don't start cashing that check before you do the damn audition. It's just an audition. Go kill it, but you probably won't get it. Come on, let's be honest. They're going to see 1,000 people for this audition, and 900 of them are better looking than me. Come on, what are the odds? Just go do the damn audition. And yeah, you get your feelings hurt, especially when you see the person who gets it and you think you're better than them. And sure, yep, that's what it is. That's what we signed up for. And so, yeah, it took me a while. It took me a long time, though, because especially when I look back now and think of all those years I did comedy, and I was having panic attacks all the time. I drank them away. I drank a lot then. I don't anymore, but man, I wonder in fact, now I don't know that I've ever thought of this, but I wonder had I had a Jewish girlfriend in my 20s instead of my 30s who introduced me to therapy, and I had found out that that one, panic attacks are normal. You're not a mental patient. You're not a pussy. Whatever was going on in my head, loser. That in fact among comedy people it's like really common. I wonder if those years would have been even better because I wouldn't have beaten myself up so much. Or not. Maybe I needed the beaten up, right? Who knows?
Right. Yeah. It's could it have been different so I could have avoided that, or was experiencing it what I needed to shape everything else?
I went through a lot,
that.
many dark episodes going on, just forcing myself to go on stage even in the midst of a panic attack. Now, once I was on stage, there was no more. I'm more, because, anxiety and that stuff is all what ifing, right? Mm-hmm. What if that happened? What if this happened? What if that, once you're in the moment, right? I mean, no one has an anxiety attack during an earthquake. You got one worrying about an earthquake. Once this earth starts moving, you find a table to get under, right? I mean, it kind of, I say early on, I really beat myself up. And a lot of, like when I work with young comics now, a lot of it is just telling them, first, that will never go away. It will always be scary because it's supposed to be scary. But ultimately, we're funny. So just go be funny. Even if you forget your whole act, which is the big fear, my big fear, then just be funny. Just be that guy who can make a room laugh, right? That's who we are.
Yeah.
So,
I want to dive back a little bit because I'm still curious of where that transition comes from of like when does comedy just become like the number one thing for you?
Well, like say for me it was the Tonight Show, because I was just a comic. I was a good comic. I was in LA. I was a regular at the Improv. I was getting up at the Comedy Store. I was doing some of the little cable shows that were going around then. I think Rosie O'Donnell gave me my first show. She hosted a little show on whatever, VH1 or something like that. I did that stuff. And then I got the Tonight Show. And it wasn't with Johnny. It was Jay Leno's first year. And that, in those days, that was how you got your ticket punched. Once you did the Tonight Show, you were a comedian. No one would ever take that away from you. That was the thing. Now, unfortunately, there's not the thing. There's a lot of little things, but none of them were quite, because the market was just so much smaller then. So that is when, and then a few years later, when I got a writing job and suddenly there was a paycheck attached to comedy, was the big change in my life, because I was still, you got $600 to do the Tonight Show. It wasn't like that was like a studio deal, I was still making no money. So,
right. And that's when the Tonight Show first pops up, is that like that was writing for them, right?
Oh, no. It was performing.
It was performing.
Oh, yeah, no. Okay. That was, doing a set on the Tonight Show.
And then that, a couple years in, transitions to writing.
Yeah, more or less. That was, like I say, that punched my ticket. That made me legitimate. I'm a Tonight Show comic. Mm-hmm. He did the Tonight Show. I hadn't had an agent or anything. I had... just going down another rabbit hole. I had been married before, and my first wife was a sitcom writer. She became that after we were married. And she had convinced me that I could not do that I just did not have the work ethic to be a writer. I was a comic. I got high with my friends all day and then went and did 10 minutes at the Improv. That was my life, right? You couldn't make it in television. And I believed that. And she believed that too. I don't think she was being mean. I think she was being honest. At some point, I came home from a gig in Hawaii, and she told me she was leaving me. She found someone else. She was leaving. I'm a loser. I'll never amount to anything. And she left. And I spent a week or 10 days in the fetal position, literally, before the Jewish girlfriend. And a friend of mine who knew an agent got my script. I wrote a spec script into the hands of an agent, but I was not set out to be a comedy writer. I was sure of it. She got me one informational interview with a showrunner who ran a show called Grace Under Fire at the time, but even he said, "This is just informational. I can't hire you, but I liked your script. Wanted to encourage you. I hear you've been going through some rough times. I saw your Tonight Show set. You did great, whatever." The interview went so well. We found out that we both played Will Parker in Oklahoma in our high school play. We sang I Got the Kansas City together in this. It was the greatest interview in interview history. And he said, why don't you come hang out with the writers? Learn the process. I can't hire you, but come hang out. So I showed up the next day and just hung out in the writer's room and immediately knew my wife's a fucking liar. I belong. This is where I belong. These are like being in a room with smart, funny people. I pitched a joke that first day that got a laugh in the room. And Tim Doyle, the showrunner, he's just giant guy. He's like 6'8", big old kind of giant mane of hair. And he made like this kind of comedy move. There was a phone on the table, and he picks up the phone and he says, "Get me Marcy Carsey," who was the head of Carsey Werner at the studio. And then, he said, "Well, you tell Marcy that the guy they won't let me hire just saved her show."
Wow.
And so he hired me for like baby writer money, which is like the lowest level. You're a staff writer. And I was good at it. I'm a really good joke writer. I knew I was a good joke writer. And once I got in there, it was like, they're like, "Wow, you're really good at writing jokes." And I was like, "Yeah." And now, for the first time in my life, I'm going to get paid for it, right? I'm going to make my first year as a comedy writer. I remember when I went to pay my taxes, I went to this accountant, never had a reason for an accountant before. I went to an accountant and I realized that my tax bill was more than I had ever made in a single year. And the accountant thought, I was going to be furious for having to pay these taxes. And I was like, this is awesome. I'm so glad that I'm able to give a little back. I've been living off the system my whole life. No. So, yeah.
So I guess what's the trajectory after that? Is it, is it years with that team? Is it just
no show to show? I went from the Grace Under Fire show on ABC. The next year was Ellen. It was her gay year, the year after she came out. It was the #1 show in television at the time. So I went to Ellen. That was awesome. Wrote all these really kind of groundbreaking shows. It was the first gay television shows. I mean, all of them. I wrote the first gay dating episode in network television history because we were the first show. And I wrote the first one of that season, And then from there to the Drew Carey Show, which was also like a top 5 show, huge.
Big fan of Drew Carey.
Yeah, of course. Ohio was, and then went from show to show to show. I kept getting bumped up because I not only did I fit into the television writing, but joke writing, to be able to write a joke quickly on any topic at any time, that was gold there. In most lines of work, that's like a bar trick, right? There, in the sitcom world, that was gold. That's what studios are built on. And when they find someone, especially early on when I was at baby writer money, I was cheap. There were shows fighting for me every year. Up until then, I got a big fancy overall deal, which was a 3-year deal from Fox to work on Two Guys and a Girl, which was Ryan Reynolds' show at the time.
Okay.
So, and where I met my current wife was an actor on that show. It's actually met Tina on that show. So, yeah, and then at that point, I had agents and managers and lawyers who handle your career for you, which is wonderful, other than the 25% off the top that you got to pay people. But they negotiate your contracts, they get you your interviews. I just get to work on the show, go home at night, work on original ideas. I sold a bunch of original pilots in that period. It was wonderful. It was just me and my sense of humor. Living life.
That is so. Let's say we've talked a lot about stand up and stuff like that, right? Obviously, you're doing a lot of writing workshops and classes and all this sort of stuff. Now, if someone was coming to you and said, hey, I would love to be, and obviously I know the landscape has changed so much, and social media changes so much, but like at a base level, if someone was saying, hey, like, how do I become a writer for a series? How do I get myself a portfolio or get myself even set up to do any of that? What's some of your go-to advice now from all of that experience?
Write every day. Write scripts. Your first 5 are not going to be good. You're going to think they're good. Your mom's going to think they're good. And maybe the second or third one might get you a nibble somewhere. You might win a contest. But, right, just like your first 5-minute set was good then, it was your first one. It wouldn't be good. You wouldn't do it now if you're 2 years into doing comedy, right? I always tell these comedians, when I ask them, like, even when I was just a stand-up comic, I was sure I was not any good. I probably couldn't be a television writer because I wasn't disciplined enough. I was still writing scripts, because the worst thing in the world in this business is you get an opportunity and you kill it. You crush one night. And at the end of the show, you know, the boss of show business is in your dressing room because he was there to see the headliner. And you blew him away. And he's like, you're fantastic. What do you have? What can I see? And you're like, nothing. Okay. You better have something, and it better not be the first thing you ever wrote. It better be your 4th or 5th script that's smarter and you've developed a style and has some cool characters. Then you show them that and you're on your way.
Yeah.
But you got to be ready for it. And so many, and I know it is a different world, but it's always a different world. Well, there was never a year when it was the same as it always was, right? It's always different. It's always different. You just got to do whatever you're doing at that time. You just got to do it. Do a lot of it, and work it and rework it and work it. You know, Columbus has a cool comedy scene now. So much better than even when I got here 6 years ago. Very different. Post-pandemic, it became a scene. And there's some really good young comics. I don't know how many are ready if they get that opportunity. I know there's a few who write every day, and that's great. And they might be ready. They might have some stuff in the bank at home that they can show people. But that's the thing with them. It's like, what do you do? And you gotta have something, even if it's your sketch packet, whatever. It doesn't have to be. Actually, a young guy just graduated from Ohio State. Funny young guy, really young, just a kid, very funny guy. Called the other day because he's submitting to a show, and I said, and they asked for sketches, and I said, well, do you have any sketches now? And he's like, yeah, I got a lot of them. I've been writing them for 6 years. And I was like, hallelujah, man, you have a career in this. I was so happy to hear that, because that's not usually what I hear.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, go through them, find the ones. Maybe you got an old one that's a good premise, but you weren't a good writer then. Rework it, whatever. That's great that you have that now. And then you know it. Imagine if you were, you get an opportunity and you've never written a sketch before, and you're like, going to Copilot and asking AI to write me a sketch.
Yeah.
Which is what, people do.
Yep.
So
when you now look at what I'll just call like the modern day landscape of, let's just say, entertainment, right? We can encapsulate comedy or writing or whatever. How do you look at it? I know that's such a broad, like not a direct question, but I'm so curious of like, you've experienced so much. You've experienced so much change and all that sort of stuff. And nowadays I feel like there's arguments for both sides of like, there's more opportunity than ever, but it's more oversaturated than ever, and all this sort of stuff. And it's kind of probably however the individual looks at it ultimately. But like, when you look at the modern landscape of everything that we've been talking about, of writing, of trying to get on a show, of producing your own sketches or making your own show or whatever, what's your perspective on it? Like, how do you see it?
I think there is more opportunity now. But again, That's always the case. There's always more opportunity than there was in the previous generation. That has always been the case, right? TV came instead of radio. In my era, cable was new and streaming was just starting. Whoa, there's going to be so many more jobs, right? So yes, but then there's more people, whatever. From a talent standpoint, I think the hardest thing now for young talent is that it is harder for talent to be seen because now we reward marketing. And if you are a talented comedian who is not a marketer, and I put myself in that category, were I starting now, I don't know. Maybe I would have developed marketing skills, or maybe I would have just fizzled out and gone and done something else. That's cool too, whatever, I don't know. But I think it's very hard right now for a talented comedian with original material to be noticed for their talent, unless they're mostly a marketer. And so that's hard. That's hard. But that's always been a little bit of the case. But at least like in my world, I had those opportunities where I could go to a club where nobody knew me and just go on stage and do my Jim and Tammy Faye joke and immediately get recognized by comedians as, you're one of us, you're in, and I got to build a career based on that, purely on my jokes, We do that. I mean, I certainly work with a lot of comics, especially anyone I find funny. I'm like, let's hang out. Let's, do more of this, do less of that. You might want to give some thought to what you're wearing. I never tell someone what to wear, but it's like, you should at least be making a decision, not just rolling out of bed and putting, you are an entertainment. Even you're the lowest level of entertainment, but it is still entertainment, little things like that. Just, that people told me that was, you need to hear. But so yes, there's more opportunity in that anyone can shoot something and put it online. But I mean, the thing I will tell like people who take my classes for comics, it's like the only thing we know for sure in 5 years is that we'll be doing it differently than we're doing it now. It won't be TikTok centric, or if it is, it's become a different thing. It will be different. We know that. That's the only thing that we know in entertainment. So, anticipate if you can, try new things, but most important, find that voice that is just yours. And it's not something like you develop. You just do that by doing a lot of comedy. You just write. And eventually, it's not usually us who decides what our voice is. It's other people. You hear people describe you in a way, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's kind of who I am. I remember I heard the owner of the Improv, Bud Friedman, describe me to someone as silly smart. He's silly smart. And I was like, okay, yeah, I guess that's right. I am smart, but I'm goofy. All right. Yeah. And it's like, but it was a positive. That was a very positive thing for him to be telling an agent that why I'm a good comic, so, Yeah.
I guess going back, like, how long did you write TV for?
I had about a 20-year TV writing career, of which I probably worked 15 or 16. I took a break at some point in 2008. I quit. Well, I took a break from there and went to D.C. and worked on Capitol Hill. I finally got the job I was looking for after college.
So that stuck.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
and that my whole time being a television writer, I was still writing speeches for politicians. I mean, I love doing that. And I have many friends who are out there in the progressive political world who I still write for. But my very good friend, who was in the state legislature at the time, got elected to Congress, and she said, and it was right after the previous writer's strike, and so I wasn't working, and she said, why don't you come to DC and run my communications department, which I knew nothing how to do other than that I'd run writers' rooms, and we'll figure it out. And from Jackie's point, she wanted her person. She wanted someone who knew her more than knew the job, and so I went and did that. But anyway, from start to finish, it was around 20 years. I think I worked on 10, maybe a dozen different shows. They were all top shows. I never worked on a show that was canceled until I ran a show for Disney that was canceled. But everything else I worked on were shows that had long runs, were major network shows,
And so you said you were still, writing speeches and stuff like that during that time, and I'm assuming you were also continuing stand-up outside of those things?
A little bit of stand-up. When you're a television writer, I mean, just, as a comic, I see things, I write every day. I mean, I've never gone on stage without a new joke, other than like a TV appearance where you've rehearsed a tight 6, So I'm always writing material. But when you're writing on a show, that material goes to the show. You just naturally, they're paying me. My stand-up gig is $50, and this is 6 figures. I'm going to give them the joke,
Right.
So you do a little bit, but really most of my brain, also the hours on a network sitcom are usually horrible. You're usually like 10 in the morning till 2, 3 in the morning. They're very long hours, and then you drink for a few hours, and then you crash and do it again the next day. So there's not a lot of time to do that. I would do a little bit. I would always, throughout my career, I would always go up to San Francisco to Cobb's, where I got my start, because that's where my family was, and I would always do a couple weeks at Cobb's, and I always got to open for like major acts there. So that was always cool for me. I'd get to go into town, and my folks could come see me open for Richard Lewis or Kevin Pollak or whoever was like top acts at that time. So that was great. But I couldn't really do the nightly, like get a spot at the Improv, because I'd have to cancel. You can't do that. You don't keep getting spots if you have to cancel because your gig ran late on your show. So to me, writing. I always tell people, I once had a girlfriend who got mad because I told her I couldn't go out with her because I was writing, and then I went and played golf. And she was like, I said, you are mistaking writing for typing. I didn't say I was going to be typing. I said I was going to be writing. And I played golf by myself because that's 4 hours of just me.
Yeah.
Just me in my head. I need a place to go putter so I can run ideas,
Yep.
Especially writing scripts. I do a thing where I take my character with me. So if I'm writing and I'm going to go do something, I'll pick a character that's maybe not fleshed out. And I'm going to bring that 12-year-old boy that I don't have. I'm going to bring him to the store with me today. And then while I'm walking around going, what would he be doing? What funny thing might he do with pick up a banana? And I don't know.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
That is
I do it all the time. Whenever I'm writing scripts, I'm always bringing someone with me. Or if I'm in like a weird situation, I'll be like, who to pick a character. Okay, they're with me. What would they be doing here?
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm hanging on to that one.
Yeah.
That's good. So okay, so you're living in LA while we're doing the TV writing.
Uh-huh.
When, I guess, does that gig come to an end? And like, how does it come to an end? Like
when Hollywood tells you they don't want you anymore.
Yeah, okay.
It is a hustle every year. So as a television, especially back then, network television is on a schedule. And the shows begin production in June, right? They usually end in March or April, and you have a hiatus, right? So by the end of May, like Memorial Day weekend, is when the last spots are being filled on shows. That's also my birthday weekend. So that weekend every year, I would usually be waiting to hear from my agent if I got the gig. And it was always like, it wasn't like you're either going to get a $300,000 gig or a $200,000. It was either you're going to make $300,000 or nothing, right?
Yeah.
So every year you would be like, and your friends would be, who were up for this. Very often my friends were people like me. They were up for the same gig, and you would hear, hey, Pat got a job. Oh, good. Good for him. So while I was there, so it was always this thing. And while I was a young or a new writer and cheap, the jobs were like multiple offers every year for 5 or 6 years. But then once I got to a point where I was co-exec producer, fewer and fewer spots. Also, finally, Hollywood started to catch up to what all of us bleeding heart liberals had always said it should be, which was diverse. It wasn't. There was a show where I was on where because I wasn't Jewish and from Brooklyn, I was like the diverse guy, right? A Catholic from San Francisco, I didn't even know you could be funny, So part of it was also, you can see the handwriting. It's just not that many seats left for me. An inexpensive joke machine, there were seats for me. Now I'm an expensive joke machine, So, you just start to see it. Now, someone had given me advice long time ago, a comedy writer who'd had a great career. And he said the only real sign of success in Hollywood is leaving with money in the bank, right? And so I was always thinking that I'd rather get out too soon than too late, because you can always come back, right? I mean, when I first moved to Ohio, as far as my manager and the industry, knew, I was still there. If I get a meeting, I would just fly in, and we don't need to tell them. And then even when we did, Rob, a great manager, would say that I bought a little ranch in Ohio, so it sounded like a writery thing to do.
Perfect.
It was my second home or something. The hills of Plain City, Ohio.
I go to Ohio for the winter.
Right. But yes, I was. And then when the pandemic hit, I looked like a genius, because everyone was trying to get the hell out of these expensive towns.
That's when all of that happened. Is around.
We
that
moved
time
here
frame?
End of 2017.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then so writing for television a couple years after that is when that.
Well, 27. So we moved here. I think I sold a pilot that year to Disney or something. So I made my nut. Not much, but so for a couple of years I was selling stuff, certainly pitching a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. I've sold 10 or 11 original shows over the years. None of them ever made it. None of them even ever got attached to film. I mean, they were just scripts. You do go to development, and I don't even know that that's a pathway that people do. But that was a way, as a writer, you could still. You're not getting your series money, good money. I mean, but you're still getting good money. You're still getting a livable amount if you sell a pilot, and that is pretty much a 6 months of hard work, development, writing, rewriting, all that stuff, So I had a little bit of a transition, and then, and was writing speeches, but mostly freelance stuff.
Okay.
I would occasionally get hired to write for like a CEO or someone where there was maybe a little bit of money, but most of my speech writing clients are people I've been written for forever. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are friends. I don't, maybe they pay me. So if I ask them, they'll pay me, but usually it was like, yeah, of course I'm going to,
right.
Now,
maybe this looks different than how it did before. Obviously, we've noted a few times, things are always evolving and changing. But I'm really curious to know, what would your go-to advice be for, putting together a pilot pitch now? Does that lean more into, hey, you know what? If you have a proof of concept ready to go that's with this script, then you're even more golden? Or is it write and pitch and just throw some darts and see what happens? What's some of the go-to that you would say that goes into making a pitch?
In fact, I just taught a workshop earlier this summer over at Film Columbus on this. We called it Itch to Pitch, your idea to a pitch. Right? So the first thing is, okay, let's say you have a great idea, okay, and we're just going to say it's a great idea that should be a television show. We're not going to get into that. How do you get in the door? Is there any way you can get in the door? I can still get indoors, I think. Haven't tried in a while, but I have enough people that run studios that still know me if I had something I believed in, but most people cannot. It's really hard to get in there. Okay, it's really, really hard. For a good reason, because there's a lot of people who write scripts. All right, and most of them should not be read by professionals, right? So, the gatekeepers have a purpose, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a big part. That's kind of reading the room. Okay, what's the plan here? How are you going to do this? If you have no access at all, then you got to get people's attention some way. So IP is really big in Hollywood right now. It didn't used to be. I could go in and just pitch a funny story, and they would often buy it because they knew me, and they're like, yeah, it's a funny story. Now it's almost like you have to begin with, there was a New Yorker article about such and such. What if that person did this? So that's a start. If you have an idea, see, is there a piece of IP that fits it? And maybe you can find someone through that IP. Does that, can that writer get in a room? Does their publisher, can they get in a room? Kind of see how do it, and then there's obviously the development of the idea. If not, is there the social media route? Is there a 1-minute version of this idea that is going to capture the world by storm? Is going to be, whatever, that, Gangnam Style,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the great democracy of the internet now, right? There's always that. Well, good luck with that, So, now that, though, is all secondary to the 60 hours a week you're working making this pitch. Great. These characters have got to be flawless. They have to be so funny. They have to be funny in the way you if it's a comedy, their stage direction better be hilarious. The way you describe that character better make me laugh, because we're not getting that far into it. Very often, like, people say, I have this idea, and then they start explaining, I'm not laughing. And is it a comedy? I better be laughing immediately. If you're Chuck Lorre going into pitch, they'll hear you out. You've already done 10 hit shows for us. But if you're Joe from Columbus, Ohio, and you're pitching a comedy, it's got to be hilarious from the get-go. And then figure out a way to get in the room. Now, having said that, and it sounds very discouraging, it's always been discouraging. Look at me. I'm a blue-collar kid from this San Bruno, California. My dad was unemployed most of my life. I didn't know anyone in show business. I had no business being in show business. But there were enough, this person knows that person. I got in the door, and I hit it out of the park in that meeting. A lot of luck that we both were goofy musical theater people and, whatever. And then when I got in the room, I'm a really good joke writer. I showed them what I can do. It's like, you see these videos all the time of like some kid gets pulled up on the stage with, a band and gets the guitar and shreds. And it's like, yeah, he got pulled up on stage, but he shredded. There was all the luck that got him there. But then, in that moment, He did it.
Yeah.
You know. So,
I want to dive back into that time when you're transitioning out of writing for television. Mm-hmm. Is that a comfortable feeling for you?
No.
Is that a like, oh my God, I can't believe this is ending. This kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, take me back. Like, what's...
Yeah, it's horrible.
Okay.
Yeah, no, because it's at that point in the micro, it's failure, right? That year, you didn't get a writing job. Maybe, in some cases, it's been because usually like 1 year without a job, you can kind of muddle through, right? You can make it, you know. But LA's expensive, very expensive. And so, you know, as you start, and my wife at the time, we had a little kid, and my wife at the time was like, you know, how long are we going to be able to stay here? We should move to Ohio. I'm not moving to Ohio. You know, so yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. And, you know, but in my case, I already did that, right? In 2008, after the writer's strike, there was no work. And then this going to D.C. to work for the Congresswoman. Yeah, I glamorize it and say it's the thing I always wanted to do. It was one of my best friends. It was this awesome experience. But it wasn't, I would have rather been on Frasier or whatever, you know. I forget which, there was a big, was it Frasier at that point? Or The Simpsons? One of those where I was like down to 2 people, you know. And no, I was number 2 evidently. And then it was like, you know. So I went and did this thing. So I did give it up. I went there, and I was perfectly planning on that being my career now. Television is something I used to do. And then a few years of doing that, I started getting antsy and wanted to go back into television and started looking around. And so, you know, like I say, for me, it's always been a hustle. So yeah, I'm pretty good at like taking things as they come and saying, well, all right, that sucks, but what are my options? Well, I could sell shoes. I don't want to sell shoes, but if that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do. I got to go sell shoes, you know. So, yes, it's certainly, the defeat was huge, but, yeah.
So I guess kind of what takes shape after that? Like, is it still, you know, we're dipping our toes back in the water every once in a while to like see if any, you know, writing things are popping up?
Yeah.
Are we just kind of freelancing? Are we focusing more on comedy?
I was hoping to do more of that, and then, but it just wasn't. It was partly the industry really did collapse quite a bit anyway at that point, and then it really was a time where women and, you know, writers of color and writers with different backgrounds were no longer like the token in the room, but they were kind of the focus of the room, which is good. Mm-hmm. Partly why we hit a renaissance in television is because we opened it up to the other 90% of the population that could be funny. You didn't have to be a old Jewish man from Flatbush, Brooklyn to write comedy, you know. So that was good, but that obviously meant there was going to be fewer chairs for me. Also, the industry went from rooms that had 14 writers to rooms that had 6 writers and all this sort of stuff. And streaming came in, so instead of doing 22 episodes, you were doing 8 episodes, and we get paid by the episode. Huge difference in the amount of, you know, as a television writer, when you work, you make really good money. But then you don't work. So you kind of have to. So, you know, so the whole landscape changed. So, yeah, I was in it. I mean, technically, I'm still in it, right? I don't really pursue it other than every now and then, you know, talk to my manager. Every now and then someone will say, hey, would you read something? Let me know if you're interested. Whatever, you know, you're always there. But, yeah, so for me it was tough. But I also, to take a dark turn here, you know, from when I was a comic on the road, I developed a real love of whiskey. And when I wasn't working, there was a lot more time for drinking. There was no money to buy it, but it was suddenly there's not a lot of reason not to drink when you're not working, you know? And it kind of fell into that. And then the pandemic came, and there's really no reason now not to drink. You know, over the course of the pandemic, I finally kind of grew up in that regard and was like, well, this ain't working. I got a kid, I got a wife. This is, you know, I had all the whiskey I wanted to drink. I didn't sell myself short on that. I can say, all right, I had it. And that was great. So for that, and then it was really at that point that I said, I was still always looking for speech writing work and doing some freelance stuff, working for people. I had a short gig at the Department of Agriculture where I wrote for an undersecretary for like it was like a 6-month contract thing. But so I had stuff I was doing. But that's when I decided I was going to reinsert myself in the comedy scene. I was going to make a name for myself in Columbus comedy. Both by doing stand-up and teaching classes and mentoring people and finding a couple young comics who I liked. Hannah was one of the first ones. Saw her do a set somewhere out in Newark. It was before the hashtag was around. And, we started kind of talking and writing together. And then once hashtag got set up, started teaching classes there, and I really kind of inserted myself in the scene. And that's really when I realized, and it wasn't right. It was a couple years or a year or so into that when I realized. In fact, I remember being on stage at the Attic, where I realized that I'm loving this. I don't think I ever had that thought on stage before, that I'm just loving this. I'm really good at it. Who gets to be better at something in their 60s than they were at their 30s? That's crazy. There's nothing else that you can say that about. And that was like a real revelation for me.
What was it that brought that revelation?
When I realized there was no benefit to me for doing comedy. The money sucks, especially in a town like Columbus. Anytime you're getting paid by Venmo, it's not really a professional gig, right? There's no money. No one's going to discover me. Why would I do this? As a young man, it was maybe to meet women or whatever, but I'm like, the only reason I'm doing this is because I love it. And then I'm good at it. That was the big revelation for me. I remember being on stage and like making some ad lib to someone in the audience and feeling that rush, the kick. There's a thing in comedy called the kick of discovery. It is the millisecond where someone's brain realizes it's been tricked. Right? It's why jump scares work in movies. It's why magic tricks work, right? There's that moment, oh, you got me, right? And most jokes, the kick kind of rolls. You get it, and then you get it, and then they kind of get it, and they only get it because you laughed and they figured it, right? But there's also those times, and we've all been there, right, when the joke is so damn crisp and perfect that the whole audience at the exact millisecond just, whoa. And I don't remember what the bit was. I just remember just this, and it's not that big a room, right? So just, and at that moment, I just remember like, I'm really good at, that's the only reason I'm doing this is for that, And it was a really good moment for me because it was, throughout any career in comedy, there's always the question of what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? Yeah. What possible good is going to come from me telling jokes at a bar?
And do you feel like a lot of that maybe connects back to some of what we talked about earlier of like that doing it for the joy, doing it just because we want to do it, and rearranging some of those expectations of, like, again, yes, at a default setting, anybody who's doing a thing wants to be quote unquote successful at it to some level. But do you think any of that kind of connects to that, like, hey, you know, my expectations are, is this enjoyable right now? Like,
yeah, part of it is obviously maturity and experience, but also part of it is a little bit of acceptance. If you're 25 and doing comedy, you shouldn't be doing it just for the joy. The joy should be there, but you're starting your career. You do care who's in the audience, and you are doing it to get discovered. And you better be thinking of what town you're moving to next. Don't stay in Columbus. As much as we love the Columbus comedy scene, the way this scene is going to move to the next level is when people leave it, not stay here. When they leave it and we start to say, wow, he's one of those Columbus comics. That guy who's, killing it now, right? I mean, that's how a town becomes a comedy town. Isn't because people stay here and keep doing it for the same audience. It's because they get good here and then they go to wherever, New York, LA, wherever, Boston, I don't know, wherever, and they make a name for themselves somewhere else.
Yeah.
For a young comic, it'd be like, man, I hope that after you've had a successful career in comedy, you're still doing it in your 50s for the joy of it. I wish that for you. But between now and then, I want you to have just be hustling and deal with the struggle. It's a great line in Sarah Silverman's autobiography, The Bedwetter, where she says, most of comedy is just avoiding succumbing to the futility. It was like, it's dark, but I totally get it. Because there are a million reasons every day why you should quit. And they're right. And most people should. They should. Like anything. Most people, you're not going to make. But, that was certainly true about me, and I didn't, So, I think it is wonderful doing it for the joy of it, and you need the joy to start. But as a young person, you better be hungry. And I know people talk they say, we're a community here and we're all in it together. Yeah, we are. But I'm going to be better than you. It's how we're going to make it. Yes, there is competition. That doesn't matter. I love my brothers. I am in constant competition. I want to beat them at everything we do, but I love them. I would do anything for them. But if we go play one-on-one in the driveway, I'm trying to beat them. Yeah. And you should feel that way in the comedy community. Yeah, that guy's great. Uh-oh. He's getting better than me. I can't let that happen.
When you look at the Columbus comedy scene, what is, like, great or the best part about it? And then what's something that you feel like it can get better at?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stage time now. That's good. There's too many comedians, and we're a little too generous with that stage time for people who it is very Ohio nice. And the shows suffer for it. I want everyone to have a chance, and I'm such a huge proponent for young comics and working with kids. I mean, absolutely. But we also have to be aware of when we do get an audience, we got to give them a good product, right? We want them coming back. We don't want them coming to hashtag once. We want them coming 12 times. And the way to do that is you put on good shows, consistently good shows. And so within a show, if you have 1 5-minute spot for a young comic, that's great. That's wonderful. If someone comes on a Saturday night and they see 8 so-so comics, I don't know that that's good brand or good for the comics. And, so that's kind of the growing pains right now. I think we're still trying to figure that out. The clubs are, and they're all, the Attic and hashtag both, and then there's these other clubs that are starting to do more stand-up, like the Nest and Mad Lab and some of these other places. There's one-nighters. It's great. There's so much stage time, which is great. The other thing that is hard is that in a town like Columbus, and there are good comics here, but it is fairly easy to become one of the best comics in Columbus because it's Columbus. It is not a major entertainment city. And that can get people thinking that they're pretty darn good, and you got to get out. You got to go to Chicago, go wherever, and see. I mean, I had the luxury of starting. In my earliest, open mics was in San Francisco, where these people were unattainably good. That's why I didn't pursue it there. There's no way I was going to compete with Paula Poundstone. Are you crazy? And that helped me, I think, throughout. Then, is that I always felt like I'm not that good, and there's some really, really, what I love most about the scene now? When I moved here, there were hardly any women doing comedy. Nikki Winkleman. There were a couple other women comics I didn't know very well, but now the scene is, I'd say, more than 50% women. I like that, in many communities there was, when there's just a few women, they almost become like a novelty act, like that's the gig. Whoa, a comedian with breasts. Awesome. Now, which is great for the women, is that they have to compete with each other. Right? It's not just about, hey, how about putting a woman on the show? It's like, that's not cutting it. You got to be. And so there's a few fairly new comics, new, say, 2-3 years, who are just so good. But that's what's great. I mean, that's really exciting for me.
Yeah.
To see them have to compete with each other. Mm-hmm. And I get a little, in fact, can I pitch a show I'm doing?
Please.
Tanya Vora. Speaking of, Tanya Vora and I are doing a show called Empty Talk. It's going to be at Boxland. Our first one is October 17th. And it's kind of a variety talk show. Our first guest is going to be Tim Lagasse, who is a Jim Henson puppeteer and who's amazing. But part of the format is we're going to have 2 live guests and then a video guest. Where I'm going to kind of call in some chits from some of my friends out in LA and stuff to have them come on with us. So it's a way of kind of maybe getting someone a little more well-known. Just they get on Zoom for 10 minutes. It's no big deal for them, but I think I think it should be fun, and it's produced by Joel Savage, who does the shows at Boxland. So we're really excited about that.
That's awesome.
And Tanya is someone who took one of my classes, like, I don't know, a year and a half ago, and was comedically invisible to me. She was a nice person. She seemed to be earnest, but that's not, high praise for a comedian. Now, one of the strongest comics on the scene. She writes constantly. And she has a swagger to her. All of a sudden, she's not asking, am I funny? She's like kind of going on with the, man, are you guys in luck? I'm here. And you feel that when someone walks on stage with
Yeah, I love
Nikki
that.
Winkleman has always had that, by the way. Nikki has that swagger where she walks on stage like, I don't need you people.
Right.
I know I'm funny.
Yeah. So speaking of, a new show.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, which means I'm going to ask you, what's on the upcoming or future goals list now of Mike Larsen? What's your answer?
Comedy-wise, just keep getting better at this. That's the great thing about comedy. It's always better. It's always better. I've always been a topical comic, so I've always talked about the world as it is. That changes, and it's always weirder, and so that part of it is fun. I had so many comics help me coming up. I mean, so many. I really like that. I always kind of wondered as a young comic, like, what's in it for them, you know, talking to this. And what was in it for them initially is that I helped them write jokes. Just by talking, it made them go write more material. And I found that now, like working with you know, young comics. I really like that. I really do live a little bit vicariously, you know, when Hannah last year after the festival went to LA and did shows for an agent. That was really exciting for me. Oh, my friend, I remember that moment in my career where I got to do that for the first time, you know. Yeah. So that part's really cool. And I want to keep doing shows. I still can do now. I don't like the marketing thing at all. I mean, I can make a Canva poster, but I don't want to have to fill the seats. And you got to do that now. And I mean, this is where I feel like the old you know, in my day, I just showed up at the club and they had a full house. And then we did morning radio and that was it. You know, whatever. Yeah. It was a different world. So that part's tough. I mean, if I had a real dream, like I say, dream big, expect little. Dream big would be to get to a point just in Columbus where people saw my name and said, oh, we got to go see that show. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have to ask them. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's a lot to ask for a city like this. And for more comics, I would hopefully we get to a point where it's like, oh, we got to go see Nicky Winkelman's and, you know, at such, or whoever, you know.
This is a little bit of a trail off because I was, you know, that question was going to kind of set up our final ones here. But this is a side one that you mentioned something in there that I often nowadays wonder, like, do you think it is more difficult to physically get people to go and experience something live than it used to be? You know, on that note of like, oh man, like, you know, the marketing of something isn't that fun and it's, you know, it feels like such an extra push now. And there used to just be people were looking for things to do on their weekends or weeknights or whatever it is. They wanted to go to a show or they see the name and the name is going to sell it. Because there's a part of me, you know, working in all the creation and arts and entertainment stuff that I do. There's a part of me when it comes to that live physical element of an event or a show or whatever, it's always in the back of my mind where I'm like, you know, it's I don't have all the years of experience in it, but I've, you know, done enough of it to be like, you know, I don't think it used to be this difficult to sell somebody on, hey, I promise you this experience will be fun for you to physically experience and be there. What do you like?
And can you make that promise without lying to them?
Yeah,
I can't promise that.
So, do you think it's more difficult?
It
nowadays?
is because you don't have to leave your house to see comedy.
Right.
And in most cases, when the Netflix or whatever, right, you are making the decision to go see comedy that is not going to be the same quality as Nate Bargatze on Netflix, right? Mm-hmm. That wasn't always the case. If you wanted to see comedy, that's what you went. You know, you might catch someone on Letterman late at night, or there might be a Billy Crystal might be on HBO, but there just wasn't as much, you know. Cable started more comedy shows, but so yes, it is. You know what the problem now? There is no reason for people to buy tickets in advance, and that is killing the live entertainment business. So like I do a show at Hashtag, you know, if I do like a Saturday show, usually we'll say, you know, I'll do the 7 o'clock show, but the 9 o'clock show's open if we can do two. But we got to sell out. We got to get to, you know, 70% of the first show before you're going to add a second show. But no one will make a commitment. I have friends telling me they're coming and not buying tickets. And I get it. Yeah. There's no urgency. Last night I did that show for Realtors. It was at the Attic. And, you know, there were people in the little whatever, the group chat, complaining the night of the show, performers, that, you know, I had 5 people who wanted to buy a ticket and it sold out. It's like, good. More people got to learn. I love when friends get turned away at the door.
Yeah.
I hope they all get turned away. Buy your damn ticket.
Yep.
So that's really, really hard. That's very hard, and I like that hashtag is small. Now that they've added little cocktail tables, even fewer people gives you a full room. They can still pack them in, but it's kind of nice. At hashtag, you get 25, 30 people, you feel like it's a nice room. You would like there to be 90, but whatever. I don't even know how many they hold now, max. But so yes, it's harder to get people to come out. Yeah. Especially if you're a local act, where you're doing 2 shows a week. That's the other thing with marketing. People market everything they do. Like, I did a spot at this Attic show, and they're like, will you promote it? It's like, no, I'll promote my headline show. I don't have that big a following. I got to get people to come to the show I control the quality of. If I'm the headliner, I know the opening. I'm doing this will air well after, but when we're taping, we're doing a show on Thursday night, which is a really great show. 3 really great comics. I'm marketing the hell out of that because I can honestly tell people this is a great comedy show. If you like jokes, you like professional comedians, come see this show. But like if I'm just doing a spot with a bunch of, it's like, I might put something out on Instagram that day. Hey, heading over to hashtag doing a spot. Come, but we got to be selective, right? We got to try to get people to the shows we need them to get to, and it's tough. I feel for the club. I would not be in the comedy club business. I thank God for people like Hannah and Chris Heiberger and that over there. God bless them. Yeah. But it's tough.
It's funny because there's so many different aspects of all the different things that I'm a part of. That there's always usually an idea of like, oh, I'd love to get people together for this, or I'd love to put on an event for this.
Yeah.
And there's always that yes, of course, anything like that, we're always going to be like, oh, will that work? I don't know. But like, there's more specifically always that voice coming up now where I'm like, does this need to have people physically come together? Because, man, you're really trying to sell them on this thing, and you're hoping they want to leave their house. And especially on your note of, like, people not buying stuff in advance. Like, one of the most direct examples of that I had was a couple months ago. My filmmaking crew and I put together, we put on our first ever, like, independent film showcase.
Oh, cool.
And I don't know if you're familiar with High HD Studios over in Gahanna or not, but like...
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
Yeah, so... we used their studio and all this sort of stuff. And in the lead up to it, really the goal was just like, we just want to give people an excuse to come hang out together, watch some films. It's not, we literally called it not a film fest. It was not about the awards and all that sort of stuff. And, it picked up some decent steam in just the marketing that we did and everything, but there weren't tickets really selling in advance. We had... a lot of films get submitted, but we were like, when we were talking about it in our meetings leading up to it, everyone was like, so what's your kind of expectation? And I literally said, I was like, you know what? If there are like 20 people who come out and buy a ticket and come hang out and watch some of these films, I'll be satisfied. Because, tickets were moving super slow. Again, at the end of the day, we were just like, we just want to get people together, show some films, and have some fun. That's it, right? Those are the expectations. But day of the event, we had like 80 plus people
see that, yeah,
grab a ticket and funnel in, and then it ended up being like exceeded expectations and went amazingly. But in the lead up, we're like, oh, what, if 20 of these tickets sell, we'll feel pretty good.
No, and there's no way of knowing. Yeah,
right. And I don't say that to be like, oh, this event went so well, but it's more so that like, I would love to do more things like that, to bring people together, to bring communities together. I don't need it to always be 100 people all in all to be at a thing.
Right.
But there is always that, like, a little bit of that ingrained scarcity mindset now where I'm like, I see the value in this, and I really do confidently believe that other people would get value, whether it's an entertainment or an education or a connection or whatever. I do believe they would get that value. But I can't make them come to this. I can't make them come to this thing that I truly think they would enjoy.
Right.
So I guess maybe we shouldn't do it.
And also, in my case, I mean, I am who I am. I am not drawing in 25-year-olds and who are going to be down on High Street and they're going to come to a comedy show. Some do. I'm very, very grateful that I have probably a couple dozen young people who only know me because I'm a comedian here, and I love when I see them. I'm so excited. Look at me, I'm so hip. I love that, but I can't count on that. And so I spend a lot of time, sending, emails and texts to my, friends or in-laws, begging them to come to the show. And it's like, this sucks. This isn't comedy. There's nothing funny about this. So yeah, it is hard to do. I love that Columbus has a scene. It is growing. But yeah, and hopefully some of these clubs, I gotta say, hashtag, the last few times I've done a show there, we've gotten a dozen or so like walk-ins or people who, as of now, it's Sunday. I have a show Thursday night. I think we've probably had 15 tickets sold, which to me is like horrible, but to the club is like, that's great 4 days out. It's like, it's because it is what it is. They know that and it's a smaller room, we'll have twice that or 3 times that by the time the show comes around. Mm-hmm. But no, that is a real challenge for the industry right now.
Do you think that at some point, the quote unquote bubble bursts a little bit, and it'll never go back, I don't think, but do you think people begin to revalue what I'll call, I guess, actual human interaction, actually going to an event?
I would hope so. Well, but the whole world is different. The comedy club industry, was built for the longest time on comp tickets and drink minimums. That does not exist anymore in this world. There's a few places that can still have a drink minimum, like go to Natalie's to see a band. There's a drink minimum, but there's a very upscale crowd there. That's not so that right away, they could do that. They could give away. They would, paper the room. They used to call it during the weeknight. It was a papered room, and the comics would know it's a papered room, folks. Don't expect much. Or it might be like an office party. It was like, and that's how they would fill the room, because everyone was going to buy at least 2 expensive drinks and probably some nachos, and that's how they would stay alive. That's just not the reality now. People are drinking less. So it's harder for them to be financially viable. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Looking back at your entire story, entire journey, if I were to ask you, what do you feel like the biggest lesson that you've learned out of all of that has stuck with you through everything, what would that be?
Well, in the purest, sappiest way, believe in yourself. When I was 8 years old, my grandmother, who was like a big drinker, told a story at Thanksgiving that got a huge laugh, and I said, "Is that true?" And she said, "It's funny, it doesn't have to be true." And that was like, I'm getting teared up just remembering that moment. That was like, bam! What? I can lie if I'm funny? I really do. I draw everything back to that moment of just like, yeah, I am funny. And I lie. So, but then, it in little increments here and there, where you're like, oh, I'm good at that. That was a funny joke. I just thought of that and it got a laugh. I'm good. I'm really quick on my feet. I'm good at talking to the audience. Other comics who I idolize are telling me I'm funny, and starting, but it took forever to kind of get into just, realize it. Every time I have been in a serious career slump I've written out of it, it's always been I wrote something that got either, whether it was a writing sample for a job or a spec script or something. I wrote something that got me the next opportunity, because that's what I do. Other people do other things, video, whatever they do. That's their thing. You got to go to that. You know, when in the times when you're not working and it's scary as hell and you do not feel creative at all, that's the job, man. You gotta. The whole point of being a comedy writer, for me, is that I can write a joke when I don't feel like writing a joke. Yeah, we're all funny when we're getting high with our friends. Yeah, I'm funny then too, but I got to be funny when I'm not funny. I got to be able to deliver when I'm not. And so that's something that and that's believing in yourself, that I can do this. Mm-hmm. And I've come up, when I teach these courses, it's almost entirely just things that I either taught myself or learned from other writers in those moments. Like, how do you write when you're not inspired? Most of our stand-up is inspiration. Most of the jokes that come to most stand-ups is they come to you as almost fully formed bits, you know, and then we tinker with them. But to be a comedy writer and actually attach a paycheck to the talent, you got to be able to write for people who aren't funny, right? You got to be able to write on topic for shows that you hate, and that at 2 a.m, when you hate your boss and your wife is mad at you and whatever, you got a call that your mom has cancer, whatever. Okay, now go write jokes. That's what you do. You know, you're a carpenter, you got to pound a nail, you know. So, and that, to do that is just that sappy thing. You just got to believe. I got to believe that, okay, I have this certain amount of talent, and it's either enough or it's not. That's not for me to judge. I just got to do it. I just got to do whatever talent I have. I'm going to do my best, and let's hope it's enough that they'll want to keep paying me. But, right, we don't know. So,
Mike, I have one final question for you. Well, your answer to this might be an extension of maybe what you were just talking about, but I'm still going to ask it. So right now, I end all these episodes with the exact same question. So now it's your turn. I want you to pretend that everyone everywhere is listening to you speak. So everybody in the world, you got a live mic attached to all of them. We're throwing logic out the window. They can hear you and they can understand you. And you get this one moment to share one thing with every single person. What are you telling them, and what do you really want them to hear more than anything?
Well, from a selfish point of view, what I want for myself, more opportunities to act. I love acting. That's really what got me into all this. I don't get to do it very often. I love to do that. I love when like people say, you know, my kid's doing a student film. Yes, I'm in. I just love it. No, you know, so that I would think, if from a purely selfish moment and knowing that that your audience is a creative place, ask me. That's the other thing. You get to a point in your career where people are like, Mike wouldn't do that. Like, people don't want to ask you to do a stand-up show. Well, it's not. There's no money. Ask me. I'll tell you no if I can't do it. Ask. And ask everyone. If you're like, I want Tom Hanks to do my student film, ask him. Send his agent a letter. He'll say no, but the hell, man, dream big. And I'm not big, you know, whatever. So I wish people would ask me to do things more. Yeah. Because I love doing it. We're all just dorks who want to, you know, are still just putting on plays for our parents in the living room, right? I mean, that's really all any of this is. So, yeah.
Mike, this was a pleasure, man.
Yeah, this was a blast.
I really cannot thank you enough for being down to be on the show, being interested in general and being on the show. I am so happy that we just got an uninterrupted couple hours to sit down here and just chat.
This was really fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Before we tell everybody goodbye, you do workshops, you do classes, you pop up around shows. Is there? I know we talked about how the marketing part is real annoying. But is there anything that you want to leave anybody with of like where they can find you or find anything that you do if they want to see you out?
I am Mike Larsen on all social media, on Instagram and stuff at WRITE, Mike Larsen. And I'm just really excited about this talk variety show with Tanya that's coming up. It's going to be called Empty Talk. It's empty, but it's also MT for Mike and Tanya, which is our little clever thing. And it's going to be great. And we're going to have not really stand-ups. It's going to be talented people doing cool stuff, like with this Henson Puppeteer. We have some singer-songwriters and a special video guest from someone who will be a little more well-known that maybe we wouldn't normally be able to get to Columbus, but we can get them on Zoom for a half hour to have fun with us.
I love that. Well, I'm going to be having Tanya on the show pretty soon,
awesome.
Conveniently enough. So maybe we'll talk about a little bit of that as well. Mike, we did it, man.
Yeah.
We made a podcast. Thank
Cool.
you so
Absolutely.
freaking much. We made it happen.